Motivation is a word you will hear a lot this midterm election year. Turnout tends to drop from presidential levels, so both parties look for ways to gin up interest and to gin up intensity. For Democrats, younger voters are one big challenge. They're a very important piece of the Democratic coalition, but there's clear evidence they are disillusioned, at least at the moment. Let's get some insights and perspective from CNN political commentator, Republican strategist and pollster, Kristen Soltis-Anderson. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. So let's start. The North Star in a midterm election year is presidential approval. President Biden's numbers are down. Democrats think they're about to come up. But look at here. This is just among 18 and 29-year-olds. Back when he was inaugurated, 57% approval rate. That's pretty good. Now down to 35%. Why? Why are younger voters, what is it, disillusioned, grumpy, looking for something they didn't get yet? What is it?
I think it's all of the above, everything that you just said. They're disappointed. I think young voters, we know we're not big fans of President Trump. And so when Biden comes into office, hey, maybe this will be something different, a turning of the page. But ultimately, I don't think that Biden has necessarily delivered on, say, that economic recovery that young voters were hoping for. It still feels like we're stuck in this COVID mess. And that's a frustration you feel across all generations. But young voters in particular, they're less allied to particular parties. So if you don't deliver, they're going to tune out.
And so let me ask this then. If they're tuned out, are they just tuned out or are they changing teams? If we look here at voter party preference, look at 2018, look at 2020, you see overwhelmingly Democratic voters in 2018. 67% of these younger voters went Democratic. It was a little less, 62% in 2020. But this is a Democratic group. Yes. Are they switching teams or they're just sitting at home saying, I don't like what I see?
They're sitting it out. And for a long time, over a decade, I have studied young voters. What do Republicans need to do to win them over? That's not what's happening right now. They are not switching and becoming Republican voters. Their views are still very much progressive, particularly on social issues. The issues they care about, like climate change, et cetera, are ones that they tend to trust Democrats on more. But that doesn't mean that they are feeling enthusiastic about what they're seeing Democrats do. So I think it's unlikely we'll see young voters flip and vote for Republicans outright. It's much more likely that they will simply stay home in this midterm.
But the math of staying home could be enormously consequential for Democrats in the sense that if we just look at the breakdown of voters by age, in 2018, you see the gold there. In 2018, these voters, 18 to 29-year-olds, were 13% of the coalition. Presidential year, more of them come out to turn out to participate. It goes up to 17%. If you're the Democrats, you want to keep it there. You're trying to get something close to presidential turnout because history is in your face. And the poll numbers for the president right now don't look great. Plenty of time to turn them around, but at the moment they don't. If you were tabletopping the election today, President Biden and more importantly Democratic candidates need them to turn out. Will they?
At this point, their enthusiasm is pretty low. And you already know that in these midterm years, as you just mentioned, they're much less likely to turn out than a presidential year. There's less hoopla around it. There's less of a push to get young people to the polls. So the electorate is always older in a midterm. But for Democrats, holding on to at least that 13% of the electorate being under 30 is pretty important to them. They might be lucky to achieve those kinds of numbers this time around.
So I know you wear a partisan hat for Republicans, but if you were in a Democratic meeting right now and they said, what is the one issue? We need to motivate these voters. We need to convince them we care. We're on their side. We need you to vote. What is it?
It's all about cost of living. And that's not just for young voters. That's for everybody. But young voters in particular are really feeling the pinch. Many of them just starting off in their careers. Wages maybe haven't been going up as much as a lot of the essentials that they need to buy, the rent that they need to pay. And so the ability to make ends meet is huge. And if people feel like they're struggling and can't, they're going to hold those in charge responsible.
So if you were a Democratic candidate, you might want the president, for example, to forgive student debt, something he has resisted doing so far.
It's something that's certainly popular in the polls, but then you get into a whole bunch of complications about how do you pay for it. That opens a whole new can of worms when it comes to young voters.
Yeah, how do you pay for it? We went through that last year. I suspect we'll go through that a little bit as we go forward, too, as well. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. Great to see you. Coming up for us, what climate change has to do with the snow